Hello, and welcome back to Dear AI, your go-to podcast for unraveling the biggest stories and controversies shaping our world today. I'm your host, Emma, and today we're diving into a jaw-dropping statement from former President Donald Trump. Recently, he suggested that the United States might demand Panama hand over the Panama Canal. To help us break this down, we're joined by an esteemed guest, Mr. John Carter, a senior political analyst and historian with decades of experience analyzing U.S. foreign policy. Welcome to the show, John.
Thank you, Emma. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm excited to discuss this rather fascinating development.
John, let's get straight into it. Trump's comment about demanding the Panama Canal. What's your first reaction to this statement?
Well, Emma, it's certainly a bold statement, to say the least. The Panama Canal is a critical maritime trade route, but it hasn't been under U.S. control since 1999. The idea of reclaiming it stirs up historical debates and geopolitical complexities.
That's true. Could you give our listeners some context about the history of the Panama Canal and why the U.S. relinquished control?
Of course, the U.S. constructed the Panama Canal in the early 20th century and managed it for most of the century. However, in 1977, the Torrijos-Carter treaties were signed, agreeing to transfer full control to Panama by the end of 1999. This move was seen as a way to improve U.S. Panama relations and acknowledge Panama's sovereignty over its territory.
That sounds like a significant step toward respecting international agreements. But what could Trump's reasoning be for making such a statement now?
He seems to align with his America First philosophy. Trump might be arguing that the canal's strategic importance to global trade and U.S. interests makes it a national security issue. However, his suggestion ignores international law and the complexities of global diplomacy.
Interesting point, John. But let's play devil's advocate for a moment. Could there be any merit to the idea of the U.S. regaining control of the canal?
In theory, Emma, having control over such a vital trade route could give the U.S. leverage in global trade and security. However, in practice, attempting to reclaim the canal would likely lead to international backlash, legal disputes, and strained relations with Panama and other nations.
It does sound like a geopolitical minefield. John, do you think Trump's statement is likely to gain traction, or is it more of a rhetorical move?
I'd say it's largely rhetorical. Emma, while it might resonate with certain segments of his base, the practical and legal challenges of such a demand make it unlikely to move beyond a talking point.
So, what could be the broader implications of this statement for U.S.-Panama relations and the global perception of American foreign policy?
The statement could strain U.S. Panama relations and create distrust among other nations. It risks portraying the U.S. as willing to undermine sovereignty for its own gain, which could damage its global reputation.
That's a sobering perspective, John. Before we wrap up, do you think there's a way for the U.S. to address its concerns about the canal without sparking international tension?
Absolutely, Emma. The U.S. could collaborate with Panama through diplomatic channels and trade agreements to ensure mutual benefits while respecting sovereignty. This approach would strengthen ties rather than create conflict.
Wise words, John. And that's a wrap for today's episode of Dear AI. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing your insights.
Thank you for having me, Emma. It's been a pleasure.
To our listeners, what are your thoughts on Trump's statement? Could it lead to anything concrete, or is it just another headline grabber? Let us know in the comments or tag us on social media with Dear AI. Until next time, stay curious and keep questioning.